Okay.
Hi everyone, it's Dr. Sarah Moore here, and I am here today with Shannon Harvey. So, Shannon is a health journalist and she has written a book, The Whole Health Life, and produced a documentary called The Connection. And she also has a blog where she shares more detailed information about the work that she did in The Whole Health Life and her documentary. So we have met previously. Well, we've met previously in the virtual world, but we're here today interviewing, and I'll be speaking to Shannon via Zoom. So thanks so much, Shannon, for joining me. And yeah, it's so nice to see you here face to face. So I'll start off by asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to where we are here today.
Okay, so as you just said, I'm Shannon, Shannon Harvey. I'm a health journalist. And I suppose my story when it comes to my health began when I was 24 years old, and I was diagnosed with the autoimmune disease lupus, which is an autoimmune disease where my immune system attacks my healthy, normal body, and it causes chronic pain, essentially arthritic pain all through my body and quite crippling fatigue. In recent years, the diagnosis has been to an illness called Sjogren's disease, but whatever you call it, I have a rogue immune system. And there's no doubt that when I'm going through periods of unmanaged high stress, I'm more likely to have a flare of my illness. Mm-hmm. And I really tried everything that the conventional medical world had on offer. I diligently took all the medications that were prescribed. And I also, when I felt that I wasn't getting any relief, I turned to alternatives, and I spent tens of thousands of dollars on alternative therapy, and I was still sick. And a mutual friend of ours, Dr. Craig Hassard, wrote a paper that was originally meant for medical students at Monash University that I stumbled across, I think about 7 years ago now. And that academic paper really changed my life because it laid down a scientific case for medical professionals to say that when it comes to chronic illness, the mind and the body are inextricably connected, and that if we really wanted to turn the disease epidemic around, we need to take a whole person, whole life approach to illness. And that paper changed my life. I started applying the same rigor as a journalist that I was using in my everyday profession to my health. And that inspired my documentary, The Connection, and my subsequent book, The Whole Health Life. And now I'm working on a new film as well.
How exciting. It's wonderful. So, I mean, I guess you've obviously alluded to the fact that you found Craig's paper, and that really was what drove you to sort of seek this more holistic approach. So would you like to talk a little bit about what it was that you did first, or a few of the things that you started with that really, got you motivated and what you had to commit to, I guess?
Yeah, I think one of the most compelling things as my starting point was to get my chronic stress levels under control. As a news journalist, I was under a lot of day-to-day stress, meeting deadlines. I was filing for radio and television, and there was also a lot going on in my personal life as well, with my emotional stability or instability, as it may have been. I also had chronic insomnia, so I was I was a very sleep deprived individual. And so the first step for me really was coming to understand that my chronic stress levels were impacting my illness. And I think that's one of the things probably that you would be able to speak about even more articulately than me. But I think it's one of the, it's really underestimated how significant our stress is when it comes to our illness outcomes. So really for me, I think step one was learning how to manage stress. And then what came with that was a total rethink of my lifestyle. Because as you know, when you're under chronic stress, everything else slips. First and foremost, you reach for unhealthy foods to try to, boost your mood, or because you simply don't have enough time to prepare healthy foods. Then subsequently, things like insomnia become a problem. And also, when you don't have time for the thing which I think is the fundamental, most underestimated weapon that we have against the fight against chronic disease, which is relationships and social support. And, I'd really, because I was so ambitious in my career, I'd really let those things slip.
So, no, I totally hear you. And it's a constant threat, I think, to people all around the modern world. And certainly, I see that a lot in my clinical practice, is that disconnect between what people want and know intuitively that they need, but what they actually seek in their day-to-day life. So, I would absolutely echo everything that you've said. So, what sort of steps have you taken in recent times to implement some changes into your life, and what do you find is really proven to pay off in terms of improving your health?
Gosh, it's complicated. First and foremost, often when I do public speaking, and whether it's to health conferences with medical practitioners, or whether it's just a women's group, for example. I recently did a talk for them. Often the questions that I get asked are, what's the one thing that I need to do in order to cure my insert chronic condition now? And often people want me to tell them that there's some micro ingredient that they need to take out of their diet, or some macro ingredient that they need to take out of their diet, or they just need to take one step towards good health. And I really, as somebody who has a chronic illness, I really, really wish that was the case. And I really wish I was just telling people that they need to quit sugar or cut out gluten or, exercise daily, and their illness will go away. But that's not the problem. The problem is our overall lifestyle. So I've written a piece about this that's really resonated with the audience that follows my work, which is, there is no secret. Stop looking for the one thing that's going to cure your illness, and instead zoom out and take your whole person approach. So, having said that, though, there are a lot of concrete things that people can do, and that I've done in my life in order to live well despite being diagnosed with an illness. And first and foremost, I've mentioned stress reduction, but it's also things like making sure that you're eating a healthy diet. And diet, although when you do any kind of deep dive into nutrition science, it sounds really complex and like there are no solid answers, but actually just eating a lot of real food, free of processed food, is really step one. Lots of fruits and vegetables is really step one. I saw a study the other day that said that 90% of Australians don't eat the recommended amount of vegetables a day. God, and we're sitting here wondering why we're all sick.
We're all sick. I know. It's the bleeding obvious is right there in front of us.
It's right there. So diet, obviously getting enough sleep. So stress reduction meant that my insomnia significantly improved. So I started hitting the amount of sleep that I needed, moving my body every single day, and getting out in nature and experiencing the wonderful health benefits of just being outside. But also, as I mentioned earlier, I really do think that the most underestimated weapon that we have against the fight against chronic disease is teaching people how to nurture their relationships. And for me, I think that really is one of the keys.
And sadly, I think at a systemic level, there's just not the recognition of how important that is. And you know, I look in my town where I live, so many families are FIFO, my husband included is a FIFO worker, and I see the impact that that has on our family and the families of, you know, many people at, you know, our school and our and the patients that I see in clinical practice. And I understand that, you know, it's their livelihood and that it's important that people have the finances to survive. But I think, you know, at some level there needs to be some leadership at, you know, government and other levels that understands how destructive, you know, these sorts of arrangements are for families. I don't know what you feel about that, but that's
well, I think that, I mean, that taps into, I've written a whole chapter on this in my book, about how the world around you affects your health, because I think quite often, you know, depending on what it is that we set out to change about our lifestyles, you know, when we set a good intention to turn something around, be it diet or sleep or exercise or something like that, depending on what it is that we set out to do, between 40 and 90% of us will fail at that. And often that happens within the first week. And when we do that, we blame ourselves and we think that we're weak-willed or that we just don't have enough capacity or self-control. And so we blame ourselves. But actually, when you look at it, the world around us has an enormous impact on our daily decisions and our daily activities. And partly that's because of, you know, we see how people around us are behaving and our normal gets skewed, but partly it's our life circumstances. You know, if you're the kind of person who's a shift worker and you're working, you know, you're on your feet all day and you're working, you know, a 14-hour shift or longer, and it's out of your body clock's time zone, you know, working night shifts or what have you, that's a significant impact on your health. You know, and that's out of your control. That's not your fault.
No, that's right. Absolutely.
And so you're right. I think that there's a lot of responsibility to be taken by things like government structures, and to make it easy for people to get outside and exercise and be in nature.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think there are places around the world.
Let's see what's happened with the recording.
Okay. I can still hear you, so.
So we had a little disruption then, but I'll just pick up on what I was saying, which is that often we think that it's our fault when we can't stick to these healthy changes that we intend to make. And really, I think that this speaks about what you were just saying, which is that it's bigger than ourselves and that governments and the people around us need to help us in our path. I think that's really one of the number one tips that I have for other people as well when they're looking for answers with their health, is to just enlist the most amount of support they possibly can.
Yes, no, I couldn't agree more. And I'm constantly reminding people of that when they come and see me for a general practice consult. You know, we are a tribal, you know, group, of a culture of tribe. You know, humans are meant to live in tribes, and we're meant to look after each other and protect one another. And I think that's really, you know, the modern world, sadly, we've sort of forgotten that a little bit, but I do 100% agree with you. Yes. So, Shannon, what do you think are some of the most difficult challenges that you've had to overcome in order to maintain your health and well-being? I mean, we've just alluded to one of them, and obviously the stress management has been another. So, because I think a lot of people do feel a bit overwhelmed sometimes by, you know, all of the issues, and that can sometimes be why they don't even bother trying to start.
I know. Yeah, I think we were just alluding to as well the fact that quite often we have all these wonderful intentions about turning our life around and getting healthy, but that it's really, really difficult to actually make those changes last. And that has by far been the biggest challenge that I've faced, is lasting change. And, you know, I'm a health journalist and I enjoy reading peer-reviewed, you know, academic papers, and I know all of this stuff inside out. And and I enjoy consuming all this information, and I find it difficult to stick with this. So, that speaks volumes about how hard this is. And so I think really one of the things that I've learned is to have strategies in place that are kind of like life vests, really, to keep me afloat when I feel like I'm sinking, to do the work for me. Yeah. So one of my favorite things that I do, although I talk a lot about mindfulness and how I've used meditation to help me with my chronic stress, I also talk a lot about mindlessness and making things easy around my house. So it's kind of like I make all these little contracts with myself, because the version of me right now who has all these great intentions to be healthy doesn't trust the future version of me who is, tired, who's just had a fight with her husband, whose kids have been rat bags all day, and all she wants to do is have a few glasses of wine and eat a block of chocolate. Yeah. And so I make a contract with myself, when I'm in a much more healthy frame of mind. So, for example, my kitchen is a whole health kitchen, in the sense that I've cleared all the junk food out of my kitchen. Like it's just a normal whole food pantry. There's no crisps, there's no cookies, there's no chocolate, there's none of that unhealthy stuff in the kitchen. And when the unhealthy stuff does enter my house, and it invariably does in multiple ways, it actually gets stored in my laundry, in a box with the door closed. And so what that does is that if I reach for those unhealthy foods, there's a kind of buffer between the version of me that goes for the food, who has to think about it as I'm walking into the laundry and opening the cupboard and taking the lid off the box. And it's sort of it. And I'm not saying that this is foolproof, but I'm saying it's just that extra barrier, and other things as well, like it's so simple, but keeping all our fresh fruit and vegetables on display in a really prominent part of my kitchen means that I'm always thinking about, I could make a really healthy pasta sauce with those fresh fruit and vegetables. Or, I've got a bit of a sweet tooth at my 3 p.m. slump. Maybe I'll go for something a bit healthy, because there it is right there, beautiful crisp apple waiting for me. So things like that, that make it easy. Another tip that I love is that if I don't have any meetings or anything important that day, I wear my active clothes, like my gym wear, because then, at the 3 p.m. slump, when I'm feeling exhausted, I go, I'm ready to go for a quick walk, and I don't have high heels on to get in the way of heading out for a walk. So
I love that one.
Tips. Yeah, I know. It's caught me out a few times where I've been caught, in my yoga pants and bumped into somebody important.
I think you're at that stage in your career now, Shannon. Probably people expect to see you in your active wear, and that's your kind of almost professional wear.
Have you seen that video online, the active wear video? It's hilarious.
No, I'll have to look it up.
I'll email it to you. You can include it in your show notes.
Yes, I will. That's great.
Hilarious. I really make a big joke of people who walk around in active wear.
Yeah, I must say, down here in the southwest of WA, there's a lot of people that wear their active wear. That's just their business wear, because we've got so many yoga teachers and
good.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. So, Shannon, look, I have just really loved talking to you today, and I think you've just imparted so much wisdom and also humility as well. And you've explained how challenging it is on a daily basis to maintain these healthy habits, and also that whole process of just reevaluating your lifestyle. And I like the way that you described it, that zoom out approach. I think that's really, really valuable tip. Any other closing comments that you'd like to make before we finish up today?
I think really it's, if I was to give a few tips to people, I would say it starts with your mind. You know, you can't expect lasting change to happen unless you get your head sorted first, because it's the mind, as Craig Hassard, our friend, says, it's the mind that decides, that makes all these decisions day to day. So I'd say start with the mind and let everything follow from there. My second thing is to stop looking for the one thing that will cure you, because there is not one thing, although sometimes little things that we change can make a difference, but we do need to take a whole person, whole life approach to being better. And I think the other thing is that lasting change is really difficult. So employ every single strategy you possibly can to get all the help you can. And that includes enlisting the people around you for social support, but also, you know, whilst you're trying to be terribly mindful and reducing your stress, also thinking about how to make healthy living mindless and automatic.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Shannon. Now, do you want to just quickly share how people can connect with you via your book and your online,
yes,
things like that?
Yeah, sure. So I write a free blog every week, which uses all this science and hopefully makes it easy for people to understand. And my website is thewholehealthlife.com. And you can sign up to my email newsletter, which I send out every week. My feature film is called The Connection, Mind Your Body, and that was released 4 years ago. I'm now working on a new feature film, which is specifically about the science of meditation, and it's quite different to The Connection. It's much more, my personal journalistic journey is much more open and transparent and revealed in this film. So that's just coming to the production end in the next couple of months. So it will be finished hopefully next year and out into the world. So yes, thank you also for giving me the opportunity to talk with you, and for the extraordinary work that you do as well. I mean, you're really on the front line of this, and when I meet people like you, I am filled with so much hope for the future, because you're really going to make meaningful change in people's lives. So thank you.
Well, I think having resources like you've produced to share with my patients and my students and my colleagues is just so incredibly valuable. And, you know, it takes a lot of time and effort to collate the, you know, plethora of information out there. So I really am grateful to people like yourself, Shannon, who take the time to read it, digest it, and then put it into a form that, you know, people can read quickly and easily. So I'm developing a bit of crush on a few health journalists now, actually. I think it's just, it makes my job so much easier, because I think a lot of the information that we learn as doctors can be quite difficult to put into terms for people like patients to read. So, and I think that's where your area of expertise lies. So I'm very, very grateful for that.
You're very, very welcome.
Great. All right. Well, we might wind it up there, but yeah, look, I do recommend anyone watching to please go and check out Shannon's website and her documentary and her book, which I have got many copies of, and I share with everyone that will listen. So
thank you.
Oh gosh, it's my pleasure. It's such valuable information to share. So yeah. All right then, Shannon. Well, look, I hope you have a beautiful day and stay well. Bye.